If Web 3.0 wants to actually succeed at disrupting the tech monopolies and disrupting the big centers of power to make the internet more democratic and more owned and governed by the users, one of the things that's going to happen is that these tools need to be experimented with in real-world, in-person communities. That's the case I'm going to make in this video. I see this as part of the evolution of Web 3.0, where right now we really have the tech people developing the technical side of Web 3.0. But that community is pretty separate from the everyday person, the everyday internet user. And one of the steps to sort of make these tools understood and trusted and deployable, and one of the important steps to sort of sorting through the tangles of making governance work needs to be testing out governance and getting feedback from people and getting people used to the idea of self-governing, using these tools for coming to consensus. Now, when I say real-world communities, I'm thinking about churches who are making governance decisions about how to use their finances or what pastor to hire if they're going through a pastor search. I'm talking about student groups who are electing their officials for the next year, their president and co-president. I'm talking about faculty that's working on governing the curriculum, deciding how the curriculum should be revised. Basically, any community that's trying to self-govern and come to consensus among the community such that everyone in that group is on board for the changes that are happening and for the way that community is evolving. Those are great places to bring in Web 3.0 tools and to experiment with them, to get feedback from those communities so that the tools can be improved and the population can just sort of develop a sense and an intuition for consensus and governance and such. I'm going to go through 4 different reasons this needs to happen. The first reason we need to do this is because governance is messy, and it inherently involves emotional disputes between groups of people within a community. It inherently involves conflict resolution. It involves thinking about how much effort people are willing to put into either voting or just researching what should their vote be. There's complexities around how the agenda is set up and how people react to votes when they don't get their preferred outcome. So all of this needs to be involved in the governance that Web 3.0 is trying to develop tools for. Because in some ways, governance really is one of the main features of Web 3.0. It's that instead of the power to make rules of the community and to structure an online environment being determined by CEOs and boards of directors, the hope with Web 3.0 is that there will be some kind of democratic situation that's more like one person, one vote, and less like $1, one vote. And to make that happen, we need the governance tools to work. And that needs to account for human limitations, community dynamics, and all of the messiness that goes along with consensus building and voting. The second reason we need to experiment here is because people need to develop an intuition for how these tools work if they're going to trust the tools of Web 3.0. Because with almost any voting situation, when people don't get the outcome they're hoping for, there will be some share of those people that are going to say, the process wasn't fair, the tools were not fair. And if Web 3.0 just comes out and implements itself in these high-stakes situations, then that's going to create distrust for the actual product and the actual tools. Whereas if people have had a chance to experiment, see how the tools work in smaller settings, see that the developers of Web 3.0 are taking feedback and improving the tools, then that trust can be built up slowly, such that people have an intuition about how to best interact with these tools, how strategic they need to be or not. Maybe it's best if the tools do not require strategy. Because, of course, if you have strategy in there, then the people who are the most cunning and strategic are going to have an advantage. Ideally, you'd have tools that just promote honesty. And a lot of times there will need to be social norms that back up the rules that are set by these tools for governance on Web 3.0. So people are going to have to develop a familiarity with those social norms that we need to make this actually work. And the best place to develop that is in communities of people that you already trust. If someone in the community is using the tool and you can ask them questions about the tool, they understand it, you're developing an understanding from someone you trust rather than some internet video or some tech guru who's starting up their own deal, their own company, that's just a much better situation. The third reason that we need to deploy these tools in small communities is because that's how we get feedback to work out the kinks that are going to be inevitable in these new tools. There will always be situations that the developers have not thought of. And sometimes those situations, like maybe half the group is on vacation and a certain vote happens and everybody's upset about it when they get back from vacation. So maybe the tools need to develop some sort of mechanism to where people can say, do you want to be part of this vote? And don't go forward with the vote without everybody who wants to be there having a way to engage. And that little extra piece that would be added to make sure everybody who wants to vote can vote, that would just be like an add-on that you might not notice until you encountered the situation. So I actually think this is really important for making the tools work. And it is important for the tools to be basically functional before starting this process. Or else a bunch of people are just going to get frustrated with the product and just say Web 3.0 tools don't work. So we don't want to deploy these into real communities too early. But I do think people are going to have to accept there's going to be some growing pains that go along with getting Web 3.0 up and going. And one of the contributions that everyday citizens can make is testing out these tools in their own communities. So I think that will be a role of service that some people will play, maybe in a couple of years or maybe 5 years or so, where the Web 3.0 community can say, hey, if you are a leader in some small group on your campus or in your church or in your community, ask them if they're willing to try some of these tools out as a way of sort of making the tools work better and making it more likely that we can actually disrupt the big tech monopolies. So I view this as a service role that will eventually be necessary.